Hello and welcome back to SPINCast. My name is Sheridan, and today we are bringing you yet another episode of Jobs in Esports. And today we'll be talking to Justin Chakazian, the creative director for Atlanta Esports Ventures, which runs the Atlanta Reign Overwatch team and is also part of FaZe. Justin and I previously worked together at Esports at FSU, and we created a lot of really cool content there. And after graduation, Justin went on to work as a videographer and photographer for the NACE Star League. And he is also the co-founder and creative director for College Esports News. So, Justin, if you want to kick it off by introducing yourself and your journey in college esports thus far.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for making me sound so important. I really appreciate it. You did a way better job than I could ever do at doing that. So I'm currently the creative director for Atlanta Esports Ventures. Like you mentioned, we run the Atlanta Reign Overwatch League team and the Atlanta FaZe CDL team. It's like pretty much a dream job for me. But like you mentioned, I did get my start at esports at FSU, and I kind of ended up falling into that kind of on accident because I started in that club in my very last year at college when I was a senior, and I didn't even know that we had an esports club, but I was always like casually a fan of competitive gaming. Like I was super into Overwatch League, and when Valorant first came out, I was super into that, and I knew that a lot of these games had competitive scenes like League of Legends and Counter-Strike and stuff, but I never really took the time to invest myself into them. I just like knew that they existed. But when COVID happened, um, I pretty much, well, let me back up actually. My major at the time was digital media production, and a lot of that was a lot of video work. We did a lot of nonfiction filmmaking, like documentaries and live sports broadcasting, and how to run a newscast and a news station, and pitching nonfiction stories and stuff like that. And it was a very hands-on major. We learned a lot of the fundamentals of like video editing, animation, videography, et cetera, et cetera. And then when COVID happened, all of that just kind of stopped. And it was kind of a time where no one in my major or in my creative field was really able to do anything because everything was shut down. But the one thing that kept on going was esports. So I kind of used that as an outlet to continue expressing myself creatively. And that was how I ended up even finding out that our school had an esports club. And so I just joined, not even as a creative person, I just joined like as a player, just because I was really invested in competitive Overwatch at the time. So I joined as an Overwatch player, and then from joining that, I started like getting really invested in like the production side of esports. I did a couple of volunteer gigs where I was producing some live tournaments, and it started giving me a lot of like more creative ideas. I was starting to feel that creative like kick again that I was feeling in my major, where I just kept on coming up with different ideas for content, and I was looking back at other esports leagues and what they were doing for content, and I was thinking like, oh, like what could I add to this? And that was kind of what led to me and Sheridan becoming very close, because we both had a lot of like creative ideas for esports at FSU and different kinds of content that we could make. So, like one of the first things that we made together was kind of this series called Esports Explained, where we started with Overwatch because it was a game that we both knew very well, but it was kind of like breaking down the competitive aspects of a game for parents and more casual audiences. So that way, if they have kids who are competing, they have a resource to learn about the game before they like maybe like watch a Twitch stream where their child is playing, so that way they could kind of understand what's going on and more easily get themselves invested. And we thought that was a really good idea. So that was like one of the most creatively like fulfilling experiences I've had in probably my whole career. And yeah, I just remember like both of us filming interviews in my kitchen, and like spending months and months like trying to get the final edit down and locking down a script together. We were like teaching each other kind of the fundamentals of script writing in that sense, where I kind of already knew like two column script format, and Sheridan was already a really great writer. So it was kind of like me teaching her how the formatting worked, and her like showing me like how we could turn these interviews into an actual narrative together. And it was a really fun creative experience. And from there, I kind of kind of took it upon myself to do more creative stuff at Esports at FSU, where we were creating like regular video series together. We were doing weekly recaps of all the matches that Florida State Esports played in that week, and we took on a small team of people who also wanted to do like video work and editing work, and I got to teach them some stuff. Sorry, I got to sneeze. Okay, never mind. Just a little inhale was fine. Um, yeah, and that was super fun. Like that was the first time I ever like got to manage like a team, and it was like a bunch of students like myself who were all just like super interested in esports and wanted to get more involved in the production side, kind of like how I got into it. But now, I was only doing it for one semester, and I was already teaching other people how to do it, which felt kind of which honestly, like looking back, felt kind of weird. But um, it was also like super fulfilling because like I already knew all of this production stuff, and now I was applying it to a field that on it like I had never worked in before. So it was a great learning experience for me. And again, I was only doing this for my last year of college, but I think because like I invested so much into it in that short period of time, and the world was still kind of closed off from COVID by the time I graduated, that ended up springboarding into a job with NA Star League, who I ended up landing an interview with through a connection I made during that time. And my first job with them was as broadcast and content manager, which wasn't really a creative role. It was more of like an administrative role and ops role where I was doing a lot of community outreach and scheduling for our streams and stuff. But that job specifically gave me a bunch more connections within the college esports community specifically, just because I was always corresponding with their esports directors and their team managers and stuff. So I got to make a lot of cool connections through that experience. And then eventually, when that contract ended, I went into a more freelance gig. I started doing like more freelance projects that were outside of esports and within esports. Started doing a lot of video editing stuff with the connections that I made from NA Star League, because a lot of people in the collegiate space are like looking for people to make content for them and like help prop up their own careers because they're trying to make it big. So it was a really good opportunity for me to freelance around a bit and make some highlight reels for casters and different live events and stuff like that. And so eventually I found my way back to NA Star League as a freelancer, where I was doing videography and photography, a lot of creative stuff that I loved. Again, like it brought on another creatively fulfilling experience for me, where I got to be like the live videographer and photographer for their grand finals in Philadelphia. That's where I was living at the time. And that was super fun. It was really intense. It was just like 8 a.m. to like midnight of just like straight grinding, nothing but like being at the event, getting video, getting photoshopping, going back into my little corner that they set up for me on my laptop, and like video editing something really quick together and photoshopping pictures of the players so that we could quickly post it on socials and stuff like that. It was uh I wouldn't say draining, because like as I was doing, I just felt more and more invigorated, but it was just like a very, very long weekend. And that was just like, it was one of those weekends where you walk out of it and you're like, damn, I'm so tired, but that was so fun, you know? And um, that was kind of like one of my last freelance gigs before I ended up landing this job with Atlanta Esports Ventures. But in between all of that, while I was freelancing, that was where Sheridan and I came up with the idea to create college esports news. And during that time, we kind of just saw a gap in the college esports space, where it was really hard to get. It was really hard to like just get information about the leagues that you were interested in, because there are so many different leagues, and college esports keeps on growing and keeps on introducing new varsity teams, and again like new leagues that just like adds more stuff to the laundry list of ways to keep up with college esports. So we thought it would be a good idea to have like one centralized place where people could just get all the information that they need on all the important leagues that are going on. Um, and yeah, like that was just a kind of a passion project that we made together. We're still doing it. We're still really passionate about it. We hope that like it takes off somewhere, but even if it's just like a steady increase, or maybe it doesn't like explode like we want it to, like it's still something that we're all really passionate about and something that we're still going to keep contributing to because we feel like it's something that the college esports space needs. Um, and we're really happy with where it's going right now, especially in this semester. We have a lot of great plans for it. Um, but yeah, and so from that experience, through all this esports experience, that ended up landing me with this job with Atlanta Esports Ventures, which um, has been a very fun experience. It's kind of a job where you have to wear many hats at the same time, especially because our company is very small. I don't know the size of the other Overwatch League and CDL teams, but our creative department is 3 to 4 people. So a lot of people have to a lot of it is just kind of like trading tasks between each other, where like, oh, if someone like has too much on their plate, they kind of like got to pass off one of their responsibilities to another person, and everyone kind of understands that. So it's a very like close knit working environment, and it's very stressful because again, like we're representing the creative team for these like multi-million-dollar orgs, but again, that's what makes it so fun. And um, yeah.
So, what were the differences that you noticed between making content for your major, digital media productions, versus esports? And what in your major kind of helped you continue to make that content and continue to like improve upon the content that you were making for esports at FSU?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The main difference I would say is how well established the industries I was working in for DMP were compared to esports. So when I was doing stuff for DMP, it was like we were doing stuff for sports broadcasting, documentary filmmaking, news production, all of these industries that are already pretty well established. So there were kind of like rigid rules as to how you were supposed to do it. And that kind of taught me a lot of organization skills, I'd say. Like it taught me the fundamentals of videography, video editing, script writing, stuff like that, live sports production. Um, but it was kind of there wasn't really room to kind of do it your own way. It was kind of you're supposed to do it the way that everyone else has been doing it. Um, and so when I went into esports, it was kind of very freeing to take all these skills that I learned for this very rigid environment and kind of put my own creative spin on it, because esports is so new and esports doesn't really have like an established like um digital creative kind of style where it's like you're only supposed to cover esports in this way. Well, like esports is so new that people are still trying to figure out the way that you're supposed to apply yourself to it creatively, or the way you're supposed to cover it. So a lot of the skills that I learned, like those script writing skills, like those videography skills, video editing, live production, when I went into esports, it was very interesting because like a lot of the people that were already established in that industry, like they had like legitimate jobs in that industry where they were getting paid to work inside it. A lot of them were still learning the skills that I had already known just from school, because I was learning how to apply it to a traditional media environment. And a lot of these people in esports that I was meeting at the time were kind of just like only invested in esports, and so they kind of like had to teach themselves all of these skills to kind of break into this industry. Like they already knew that media production, all they knew that they wanted to do all of those things, but the only way that they knew how to apply it was in esports. So that it was a lot of like self-taught, it was a lot of self-taught skills for a lot of people within the industry, which I think is like super impressive, that a lot of people are able to just jump into this industry with the only knowledge that they have is like they love esports and they just like want to contribute to it, so they just like teach themselves all of these like media literacy skills to like make themselves good at it. So when I was coming in, it was kind of just, okay, um how could I take all these skills and just kind of do them in my own way and in an industry that I'm really passionate about. So I honestly found it like kind of easy to transfer over, where like when we were working at esports at FSU together, like the recap reports, that was something that we were already doing for our traditional sports magazine at the school. And I was like, oh, what if we just did this, but for esports? Because like I loved working on this when we were doing it for the student athletes and for like football and basketball and such. What if we just did the same thing, but for the esports side? And it was like a lot of it was kind of like, okay, like this is something that traditional sports is doing really well. What's a way that we could do the same thing in esports, but kind of rework it a bit so that it fits the audience better? So yeah, just a lot of those same fundamental skill sets transferred over pretty fluidly, I would say.
There's a lot that you can transfer over from traditional sports. And when I was at Florida State, especially with graphic design, I was like, what is the basketball team posting? I need to see it. How can I make it myself? And then I would spend like hours in Photoshop trying to remake it. But like our
Mm,
pictures were not as high quality as the basketball team's pictures. So I'll I'll see if I can find someone. I'll pop them in here, but yeah, they were bad. They were bad, but I try to emulate sports as much as I could. Um,
yeah, but that was like kind of the cool part for me was that like a lot like again like a lot of times like people like are super inspired by like what's going on creatively in traditional media industries, and they're like, oh, how could we recreate this but for esports? And for me it was like it was really cool getting to learn all the skills that like people in traditional sport in media for traditional sports have, like setting up like a professional photo shoot and stuff like that, and just bring that to esports, which seemed like something that our club at the time was really looking for. So that was part of why it was so fulfilling for me. I was like, oh, like I know how to do this, you know? Yeah, for sure.
So you touched on it earlier about how you were managing people so early into the FSU experience, and how it maybe kind of set you up for your professional esports job now, or even just managerial skills in the future. Are there any other skills that maybe you picked up during your time at Florida State that have kind of assisted you later on in life?
Ooh, I would say organization and communication is definitely are definitely like two of the biggest things that I picked up from that. Like I feel like in every job that I've worked in, communication has been like the central pillar for whether things like succeed or fail. Whether or not you're able to actually like uh, communicate to your higher ups and to also your teammates, like what's going on, giving updates of like what you're making progress on, when you expect things to go out, just making sure everything's on the same page. Those were skills that during college I didn't really consider until I was managing a group like I was at esports at FSU. So that was definitely a crucial skill that definitely guides like most of my career today. Even just communication is so fundamental, and organization for sure. This is still something that I'm still trying to get better at, but just kind of keeping track of things, having places set up for yourself where you could have basically your laundry list of all your tasks and what you're supposed to do, and a schedule of when everything is supposed to go out. Because you know when we were doing all this content for esports at FSU, we had to basically organize ourselves and uh, ask ourselves like, okay, how frequently do we want to put out these things? What day do we want to release them? What's the best day that we could release them so that way they always come out at the same day and the same time? And just always having a schedule of like, okay, so if this is going out on this day, we have to film it by this day because it takes this long to edit. So a lot of those planning organizational skills were skills that like again I'm still trying to get better at, but I first started learning them during my time at esports at FSU.
and so, can you talk a little bit about the process of going from collegiate esports to getting your first job at NACE Star League? What that interview process was like? You talked about how you had a bit of a connection. How did you make those connections? What was networking like? Let's start there.
Sure. So I guess I'll just like walk through the journey of how I got that position. But I think it was 2019. I was actually taking online classes. So this was like before COVID. It was before it was cool, and it was much easier to take online classes. But there during that time, I think for it was my spring semester in 2019. I was taking online classes, and I was living in New York. the where home is for me. And during that time, I was because I had so much free time taking all these online classes, I was doing a lot of esports volunteer work. So, and a lot of it was collegiate, where at every college there would be some kind of like esports event happening. Rutgers was a school I would visit a lot because they had a pretty big like esports club, and they would host all these LAN events and stuff. And a couple during the time Overwatch League was going on, and I was very invested in it. So the team New York Excelsior, they had a lot of events going on in New York City and Jersey, and I would always go to those just because I wanted to make more connections and meet more people. Just like look up when things were happening, be following those accounts on Twitter, just so like whenever something was happening, I would always know. That was kind of the bulk of it, and yeah, meet a lot of people within the industry. And well, one of these Rutgers LAN events, I met someone. I met my friend Haley, who at the time was also just a student at Rutgers, and then she went on to get a job at NACE Star League. And after I graduated, she was a little bit older than me, so then we stayed in touch through all of that. And after I graduated, I saw that they had an open position. I was like, "Hey, I see that you guys are hiring. Just wanted to let you know that I was thinking about sending my application in." And she was like, "Oh yeah, like I'll definitely like let our boss know that like you're the guy for it." So yeah, it wasn't really that like crazy of a story, but it was really cool how just like that random connection that I made at a random esports LAN just kind of ended up landing me a job. And yeah, I'm really grateful for it. We still stay in touch.
Good. Yeah, we always talk a lot about networking on the podcast and how important it can be. Last week we talked to a freelance video editor and talked to him about networking and how important that is for him and his career. So we always drone on and on about how important networking is. So I do appreciate you sharing that story as well. And then can you talk a little bit more about the process of capturing a live event? You talked a little bit about it for the NACE Grand Finals, but what were your learnings? What advice do you have for any club social media manager who's trying to run the LAN next week at the ballrooms at their school? Anything there?
Yeah, sure. So honestly, I don't really know how like the production side of it works for the most part, but in terms of doing like photo and video coverage, what they did for me for NACE was they like set up a little corner for me in like the back of the arena that they were playing their matches in. And it was funny because they like this is kind of what they do with all the media people, even at Overwatch League in Toronto in this past year. I was chatting with the photo guy who they kind of like just like gave a little corner to do all the professional headshots, and he was like, "Yep, this is how it is." And I was like, "I know exactly how you feel." But yeah, so they give you a little corner with like all your laptops and your camera equipment and stuff, and you just got to like make sure that you have card readers ready and stuff, and external hard drives, SSDs, just like all the storage stuff that you need. And then you just run around doing your photo video capture stuff. I spent a lot of time networking at those events too. That event was how I met Claire, who we did that documentary for Drexel Esports for. Um, and yeah, just kind of like I'm a kind of person where if I have a badge on, I will test the limits of like where that badge could get me. So it's like even if my badge just says media and I am not real and like media is only allowed in specific areas, like I will just like keep like I will like go on stage, I'll like just do different things to make sure I get the perfect shot, until someone tells me, hey, you can't stand there, just because I feel like that's a lot of working in media is asking for forgiveness instead of permission. So obviously like you don't want to like go too far with it. Like there have been a lot of instances of like people breaking those rules who don't even like have a badge to begin with, that like photocopy a badge, and messy situation. You don't want to do that. But if you yeah, it's all about just like doing what you want creatively and making sure that your creative needs are fulfilled and making sure that you're getting those perfect shots that you need. And then once all of that is together, it's kind of just like running back to your corner, quickly like doing some tiny Photoshop edits or like doing a little Premiere edit, sending over to the social media manager who's probably also there. And yeah, and then they do their thing and they upload it to their socials, and that's kind of it. For Nace, we were also doing professional headshots, and they luckily they had C stands and a green screen and everything, so they were able to set all that up for me. But I had to bring my own lights, and I had to bring my own camera, obviously, and stuff. So just ask before you go to an event, like, okay, what kind of equipment do I need to bring? What kind of equipment are you going to give me? Because like I brought a green screen for myself just in case they didn't have one and stuff. So I had like a little like shopping cart of all my film equipment that I like lugged around Philadelphia with me. Um, yeah, so and that was kind of the bulk of it. And taking after taking those headshots, I was asked to go into Photoshop and like actually edit together like the roster lineups that we showed on stream. And that took a really long time, but because that was like my first time ever doing that, I didn't really even know what it was supposed to look like. So even then, I was like doing research, like, okay, what does the roster lineup graphic look like? How do I make it look good? How do I make it look like that? Just like after they already hired me, but yeah. So yeah, that was essentially the gist of it.
But yeah, there are a lot of learnings, and especially with student clubs, I kind of find that they're always running these LAN events, and either there's like lots of coverage or there's like no coverage at all. And I feel like if you could just find one person to be your social media manager, bring even just their phone and take pictures. Because I have a Google Pixel, and I'd say it's maybe not as comparable to like an iPhone, but it still takes pretty good pictures and videos that I'm able to use. So equipment doesn't have to be a barrier. Ask to borrow someone else's phone if who's there at the event. Take pictures there that way as well. So lots of good advice here. And then let's talk about your role as creative director for Atlanta Esports Ventures. What does the day-to-day look like for you?
The day to day in this job is kind of hopping in a lot of meetings, talking about a lot of it is talking about creative concepts that we're gonna implement later down the line for different content pieces that we're gonna do. For Overwatch League, it's a lot more simple because our Overwatch League team didn't have any sponsors, so a lot of it was just, hey, whatever idea you have, just go do it, because there's no like creative restrictions with that. But when you have sponsors, like we do for our CDL team, a lot of it is like coming up with the ideas like, okay, how could we make content that will satisfy the sponsor and that we could tie their name into? Like, what's something that makes sense for them? Like we just we have a couple partners where like we have this partner Battle Beaver that makes custom controllers, so we're thinking like, well, we spent the past couple weeks thinking of like, okay, what's a video series that we could do where that makes sense for that brand that has something to do with controllers that we can make on a regular basis. And what we came to was like this fun idea where it was like, what if we had like a Battle Beaver controller and we had him go against another player on our team with like a different kind of controller, like an N64 controller, just some kind of jank, like like you see on YouTube where it's like this $1,000 steak versus the $25 steak, which one tastes better? Kind of like that kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of it is like creative ideation, and then but that's more of a collaborative process. My sole job kind of is planning out those production shoots, so making sure we have all the equipment ready, deciding where we're going to shoot it. My boss tells me what the budget is, so I got to work with that budget and see where we should allocate our resources and stuff, and planning a shooting schedule, making sure everyone knows like, okay, so during this block of time we're going to be shooting this, and then we're going to take lunch, and then we're going to shoot this for another block of time, and making sure that basically just keeping everything organized, essentially. Luckily for our CDL team, we have a separate social media manager, so that isn't really my responsibility. But for the Overwatch side, we don't. So for that team, I'm also the creative director and social media manager. So a lot of that job is just like I wake up and I wake up and I'll like get in all my meetings. I'll do like all my due diligence. Like I feel like I'm actually working, and then before my day closes, I'll just hop in Premiere and make a silly meme to post on Instagram for Overwatch. And yeah, the that's kind of the majority of my day. We have some content creators that we work with as well, where a lot of it is either they come to me and they say like, hey, I have this cool idea for a video, and my job is just kind of like enforcing deadlines on them, be like, hey, we want to get it out by this time, so let's make sure that we have the VO and the gameplay ready by this time. And they're like, sure, sounds good. And sometimes I'll come to them with an idea and be like, hey, I have an idea, like it's based off of this trend. Can we do our own version of this? And they're like, yeah, sure, like I'll get to work on that. So yeah, lots of meetings, lots of discussions, but it feels creative. So um, yeah, it's a very fun job.
Do you feel like this job had a bit of a learning curve? Because you mentioned a lot of different things, like your boss will give you the budget, and then you have to figure out how to allocate the resources. Like, did you feel like there's a lot of learning along the way in this
Oh
job?
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I'm still learning in this job. But I'm kind of like trying I think the main thing with learning at a job is just kind of making sure that you're taking all these learnings and producing something with it. So whenever I feel like I'm at a hurdle, I'll like write it down. I'll talk to my boss about it. I know sometimes it could be like embarrassing to get hired for a job and have questions about your own job, but I feel like it's important to make sure that everything is clear about what your responsibilities are, and if you're confused about something, it's better to ask than to just like leave it out in the open because you're embarrassed to ask your boss about like because you're embarrassed to look like you're incompetent. You're not incompetent. It's just something that you haven't had to do before at other experiences. So now this is your opportunity to learn how to do it, so that way you don't have to ask any questions in the future. I know that's something that I struggle with, where I feel kind of embarrassed to ask questions because I feel like I should know things already. But um, I just got to keep telling myself there's no embarrassment in it. Like you got to, if you know something needs to be done and you don't know how to do it, there's no harm in asking. And yeah, so especially social media management, I had never done that in my life. And a lot of it is just posting something every day, no matter what it is. And eventually, as you like do it more and more, I feel like, a lot of people talk about like, oh, like what's the voice of our brand? But really, it's like, especially on social media sites like Twitter and Instagram, where most of it is just posting memes, you kind of like the voice of the company just kind of becomes your voice. So it's really just like it's kind of just posting what resonates with you, and if it resonates with other people, then you can be like, all right, then I'll do more of that. And if it doesn't resonate with people, you just kind of like step back and you're like, all right, so let me try something else. That's kind of like something that I really had to learn, because I thought hopping into social media management was about like, okay, what's my company's identity? How do I correlate what I have to say on social media with with my company's brand, and how do I not step outside the brand? But like as long as you're like not as long as you're not doing anything like terrible on social media, and as long as you're like doing your job of like posting something every day, you're posting those memes, you're responding to people, the voice is just kind of ends up being your voice. And as long as it doesn't like conflict, as long as it doesn't like actively hurt the company's brand, I learned that as long as it doesn't hurt the company's brand, that your voice on social media for a company can be like whatever you want it to be. So that was a big learning experience for me, for sure.
Can you talk about one of your favorite memories working for Atlanta Esports Ventures?
Sure. When they first hired me, the first thing that they had me do, I think it was like a week after I got hired, they asked me to go to COD Champs in Vegas, and that was super fun. That was a huge LAN event. The stadium was absolutely packed, and we had like a little merch booth where we were just like giving away FaZe merch. Like a lot of people don't know this, but we're when you activate at Activision Blizzard event, you're not allowed to actually sell anything. Like you're not allowed to like sell your merch. So a lot of people will come up to you and be like, "Oh, how much is this?" And then you're like, "It's free." And they're like, "Oh my god, give it to me. Give it all to me." So yeah, that was super fun because like a lot of I thought it was really funny because a lot of these teams set up like these really creative like booths where the New York Subliners team, they had a blackjack table where people would come and play blackjack, not for any money, but like people would like just play blackjack for fun, and it had the New York Subliners brand behind them. 100 Thieves, they had like a crane machine where they had like big stuffed animals that you could get, which was cool. But we just brought all of our merch and we're just giving it out to people. So by the end of the tournament, even though we got knocked out like halfway through, everyone was wearing FaZe stuff. Like the entire stadium was just red, which I thought was so cool. And yeah, that was really, really fun. Got to meet a lot of people that I had admired in the esports scene for a long time. Chris Puckett, who was the host of Overwatch League for a while, he was there because he's a big Call of Duty guy. So I got to have a couple conversations with him. It was really nice to network in that way. Got to meet all the people that I work with now for the first time, like the Call of Duty pros that play for our team and our creative team, and all the people on the FaZe side who live in California. So it was a really good introduction to the job for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then going back, can you talk a little bit more about the interview process and what that was like? And was there anything that you learned from the process and anything that was surprising to you?
Um, yeah, so the interview process, honestly, I applied for this job thinking that I wasn't gonna get it, and I was surprised that I even got an interview at all. Because at the time when I applied for the job, I was kind of unemployed for a year, and it's actually really weird how it worked out because I was telling my friends that I was telling my friends at the time when I was living in Philly that I was like, yeah, I think I'm kind of done with esports. Like, it's such a volatile industry, and yeah, I'm really passionate about it, but like, how long is it gonna be till even if I find a job, how long is it going to be till I get laid off again? You know, because you hear stories like that in esports all the time, and they're like, "Nah, dude, like, I know that, yeah, I know you're probably down about it, but like, your job is so cool." And they were like, "Working in esports is so cool. It's so cool that you're passionate about it. Like, if you're passionate about it, you shouldn't stop yourself from doing it." And so I was like, you know what, like maybe you're right. And they were like, yeah, dude, like, because both of my friends at the time that I was talking to, like, they worked in traditional media fields, like what we studied in. Like, one was working for a PBS station, one of them was working for ESPN, and they're like, yeah, dude, like, I love my job, but like television, that shit is dead. You know, like that. Sorry for cursing. They're like, television, that stuff is dead. You know, like esports is definitely like the future. They were just like gassing me up about it. They're like, you should totally just go for it if you want to do it. Like, don't stop yourself from doing it. So I just kind of saw this job on LinkedIn. I applied for it, thinking I wasn't going to get it, and then I got an interview, and I was like, just like talking about my experience. They asked me a lot of questions about my previous experience and asked me like what kind of skills that I could bring to the team and stuff. They were very impressed with what I said about organization. That seemed to be very important to my boss, where I was saying like, yeah, I'm kind of like a master of spreadsheets now. And she was like, say less. Like, I love that. I love that. So, and she was very impressed with my creative background and stuff like that. So, and I also mentioned my stuff with College Esports News, which kind of showed that like even while I'm not working in esports, I'm still contributing to it, which kind of like conveyed a lot of enthusiasm for the industry. And yeah, and that ended up getting me a second interview with her boss, and that process was kind of him asking me like, okay, what are you this is what we've dealt with creative directors in the past. These are the hurdles that we've come across. What are you going to do different? And I was just talking about like, well, as creative director, this is how I would do it. This is how I would make content for us. This is what values are very important to me. I was talking about communication and talking about like, yeah, it's always good to like just put your ideas out there, talk about what inspires you, and to stay really organized, make sure that everything is on track. And so I guess he saw that I could do that. So that he told me that like, all right, so we're gonna get back to you next week about whether or not you got the job. And they just called me the next day and they were like, you got it. And I was like, oh, sweet. Wow, that's so cool. So yeah, that was my interview process with that.
Yeah, definitely. And then recently you went to the Overwatch League Grand Finals. Can you talk a little bit about what you did at that event and just kind of recap the event as a whole?
Sure. Yeah. When I came down there, I was the only person from our staff, other than the coaches and the players, that went there. So a lot of the media coverage and responsibility was on my shoulders, where I was doing the social media coverage, and I was doing all of the video coverage and the photography coverage. And we had this big duffel bag of merch that we were getting rid of, so I had to carry around this like 70-pound bag of just clothes and stickers and stuff, just like walking around with me. I'm pretty sure like that was like I'm pretty sure that that was like the best workout I've ever had, where it was just like every day I was walking from the hotel to the arena with this 70-pound duffel bag of merch. Eventually, I got rid of all of it, but like it was fun because every day would get a little bit lighter, and I'll be like, oh, thank God, like thank God I don't have to work as hard to get this home this time. But yeah, so a lot of it was just like getting photos of the players while they were practicing, getting photos of them during the match. They gave me a list of like, these are all the shots that we have our photographers get at every live event, which I had never received before. It was like a creative brief of like, okay, so you're going to an event. These are the shots that we want you to get. So I was like, okay, now I had in my head, like I had a literal checklist of like, okay, I need to get this shot. I need to get a shot that looks like this. I need to get a shot that looks like this. So that was really cool. That was something that, again, I hadn't experienced before. So it was really nice to like get some organization to that. And yeah, just like getting video footage while they were warming up. For Overwatch League, we got knocked out pretty early. So a lot of my media coverage was just like days 1 and 2. And we had a practice media day, so I was taking pictures during that as well, where the day before everyone went on stage, they had like a practice media day where they would take all of their headshots and they would do like little interviews and stuff. And I just got to spectate all of that and do like social media coverage for that, like posting pictures of them doing it, like building anticipation, get ready for tomorrow, stuff like that. Um, and yeah, because we got knocked out so early, like I kind of didn't have to work for after we got knocked out. Like, but we the biggest part of it was uploading graphics and stuff. So a lot of people on our team earned awards, and we had to be ready with different kinds of graphics depending on where our team placed. So we had a first place graphic through third place graphic, and then we had like a thank you graphic. If we didn't make first through third place. And that thank you graphic I took like while we were there. So we had an idea for like, oh, let's get a picture of all the fans and then we'll put that in the thank you graphic. So we had a template for the graphic, and then I had to make sure the first day that like whether we win or lost, that I was going in the crowd and getting photos of the fans so that way we could put them in the graphic and stuff. And our not our social media manager, our graphic designer really came in clutch with that. Like she just had such a quick turnaround with that. And yeah, we had a couple of collaboration spots with the league as well. We did something with Zoe, who was the host of the league, and we did like a little 1v1 tournament with her. And we had this meme where she was joining the team officially because she's been a Rain fan for so long. So we had a graphic ready for her, and then I had to take pictures of her as well, like in the jersey that we got her. So yeah, that was the majority of it.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. It sounds like a
It
really,
was fun.
really awesome experience. And so, shifting into the advice portion now, what advice do you have for current collegiate esports leaders who would like to go on and get an esports job? Any tips and tricks, things you've learned that you want to pass down to the future leaders of tomorrow?
For sure. The biggest advice I could give is I cannot stress how important networking is. And I know that a lot of people just kind of roll their eyes when they hear networking. And I would be a person like that too. It's like, oh, like every time I talk to someone, like I got to do it for my job. But it's, I don't really think about it that way. I just kind of think of it as like just talking to someone, making connections with people, and then like when you guys are done talking, you just like get their social media. It's kind of just like making friends, and it's just kind of like having contacts in your back pocket. I think like the biggest thing is like don't think of networking as networking. Just think of it as just like being social, just talking to people who have the same passion as you. And if you keep in touch with them, that could lead to potential career opportunities. So yeah, I would think that the way I think about it is that like the career stuff kind of comes second, and it's mostly just about like getting to meet people who share this same passion as you, because esports is, even though it's growing all the time, it's still a pretty niche industry. So it's great to know all the people who work inside it and all the brains behind it. Um, I would also say just like keep creating, no matter how hard, like not no matter how hard it gets. Like obviously, like if you don't have the passion for it, then you don't have the passion for it. But if you still have that passion, then you should just like keep enabling your passion. I was pretty disillusioned with esports for a while, and I was trying to get out of the industry for a while, but you know, I kind of realized after a while that I was so passionate about it that whether I was getting paid to make content in esports or not, I was always just going to keep doing it. That was kind of where college esports news came from, where like even though I didn't have a job at the time, even though I wasn't working in esports at the time, I still wanted to contribute something to this industry. And if that's how you feel about it, then you should just keep doing it, because that could potentially lead to a career opportunity. It may not, but if you want to if you want to get a job in esports, the biggest thing that shows to people who are hiring is how much you're contributing to the space when you're not working in it. What are you putting in it? What are you putting into the space when you don't have a job, when you're not getting paid for it? And I know a lot of it kind of feels like it may seem like kind of toxic from the outside looking in. It's like, oh, like I gotta work even when I gotta work even when I don't have a job in it. Like I have to always be working, but I feel like that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's more of just showing how passionate you are about it. Like if you aren't passionate enough about something to contribute to it outside of work, then it's kind of just a job for you, and that's okay. That's like what a lot of people do. A lot of people just work to work, but I feel like because this industry is so niche, it's so fueled by passion. There are very few people in this industry that are just working in it because it's a job. Everyone in this industry is in it because they want to be passionate about it. That's what being they want to contribute to it. They are super passionate about it. That's what it is like working in a niche industry. So if you have that fire, if you have that passion, as long as you keep contributing to it in your own time, like every now and again, then I'd say you're set to get somewhere with it in the future.
Definitely. And then what would you say is one piece of advice that you wish you had when you first started your journey in collegiate and now going on to work full-time in the esports and gaming space?
I would say honestly, like even though I stress how important networking is, I would still say just to meet more people. I think I would have had a much easier time getting into esports if I just knew more people in the industry already. When you and I created CEN, I know that it was during a time that you were unemployed as well, and it was kind of like through the amazing connections that you've made over your time in collegiate esports that ended up landing you a job like shortly thereafter. And that was kind of what happened to me too. But like again, I didn't really get the job that I had through connections. I kind of just applied for it. But I imagine if I had even more connections, then I would have been able to land something even sooner. So I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of a person who doesn't really like attention, where I don't really like shouting myself out on social media. I don't really like posting stuff on Instagram to be like, oh, like look at this cool thing I did. I don't know. I that's just not really the kind of person that I am. But if I were to go back, I would kind of just tell myself to kind of not really get over it, but to just not see that as an excuse to not network, because I would kind of think of connecting with people as like kind of gross, where I'm just doing it so I could get potential career opportunities. So I just had to like change my outlook and be like, okay, stop thinking of networking as networking and think of it as just like making friends with people who are just as passionate about this thing as you are, So I think that's some advice I would give to myself is like just try to be more open to making connections.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good advice. And I'm so sorry you mentioned that you don't really like shouting yourself out. But unfortunately for you, the last question here is shout yourself out. Where can people find you? Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, anything like that?
You can find me on Twitter at thisjustin, JUHSTIN_. You could also find me on Instagram at JCChukazian. That is JCCHOOKASEZIAN. JC Chukazian on Instagram. That's mostly just me posting photos like once every 6 months. So hey, you guys might get some photos like every now and then. So if you want to see some esports photos every 6 months, that's the place to check it out. But yeah, other than that, I'm pretty quiet on socials. But again, like I always appreciate making connections. I use socials mostly just to network and chat with people. Like I don't do much posting, but I do a lot of messaging. So yeah, if you want to make some connections or if you want to see what I'm up to, you could follow me on those different platforms.
All right, well, that's all we have for you today on this SPINcast. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.